Hi, my name is Chap Bettis, and I'm the author of The Disciple Making Parent, and this is my audio blog, where I read some of my blog posts in audio format for your convenience. In today's episode, I'm going to be reading a book review that I did of the book Get Outta My Face. That's Get Outta, O-U-T-T-A, Get Outta My Face. The question the author is dealing with is how to deal with angry teens. You can listen to my long-form interview with him on the other podcast, the Disciple Making Parent podcast. But in this episode, I want to summarize some of the material from the book in written form, and perhaps it will help you the way it has helped me. Dr. Horne breaks his book into 3 parts. Part 1 is what we must understand to connect with your teen. Part 2 is what you must do to help your teen. And part 3 is how to make the changes stick. And I wish we could go into lots of details, but listen to that podcast and you'll hear several stories that illustrate his principles. But let me give you my outline or the principles that I wanted to stick with me. So let's start with part 1, what you must understand. And again, this is aimed at parents or counselors who are dealing with angry teens. Teens who have lost reference to the Lord and really just want us to get out of their face. So let's walk through this. Part 1, what you must understand. Here are some of the principles that he gives us. Teens can be respected as young adults. So that's the first thing. In addition, common grace allows any sinner, and that means your teen, to make some wise choices. So start with respecting them, realizing they can make some wise choices. God's goodness accounts for what he calls, quote-unquote, wise wants. Wise wants, wise desires that lie, and he says, often deeply within our teens. So God's goodness can account for wise wants. Teens can and must think about their choices in light of goals and consequences. So that's what he wants to do, is he wants to point out their consequences. So wise wants or wise desires are a point of contact with your teen. Personally, that's one of the biggest things I took away from reading his book. Underneath, what is it that your teen wants? So if they're rebelling against my limitations, wisely they want independence. And I want that for them. Or if they are hanging out with a group that I don't approve of, what's underneath that is a desire for friendship, which of course I do approve of. So wise wants are a point of contact with your teen. Asking the question, what do you want, is very helpful. So Jesus often used a similar question. So if you begin your conversation by reviewing their wise wants, that will probably do more than just get their attention. It likely will give both of you the ability to talk respectfully to one another and to actually be heard. So asking, what do you want? And trying to identify those wise wants. Addressing every act of disrespect by an angry teen is probably impossible and certainly unwise. And I can tell you, as a dad of 4 former teens, that is absolutely true. So part 1, my summary, those are the things that you must understand. Part 2, what you must do, let's go through these under 4 different aspects. Number 1, listen big to build a bridge to your teen. Listen big to build a bridge to your teen. What he means by that is when a young person thinks that his mom or dad or counselor understands his problem the way he understands his problem, then the two will connect. So we want to try and understand big or listen big to build a bridge to your teen. Second thing under listening big is listening and restating. So you're frustrated every time you talk to the teacher. Just rewording or asking back, reflecting back what they're saying. And then also listen in this time for what your teen does not want. So asking questions, listening for what they do want, asking what they want, and listening for what they don't want. Number 1 is listen big. Number 2 is clarify narrow by exposing the realities of your teen's experience. Focus on these 5 points he suggests. Wise wants. We've already talked about that. Identify with your teen's wise wants and clarify them. Things like healthy friendships, independence, and respect are all examples of wise wants. We want to encourage them in that. Asking, what do you want, may be helpful. If the want is being expressed as a negative, help them clarify it as a positive. For example, I can't wear what I want can be expressed as a desire for freedom or independence. So identify those wise wants. Under clarify narrow is clarify the power of choosing. Affirm that your teen has the ability to choose. No one can control them. As adults, we know that certain kinds of choices, good or bad, bring predictable results from others. Teens don't see it that way. They tend to blame everybody else. But this is the way life works. So your teen can continue in his behavior and reap the negative consequences, or he can decide to make different choices. Only he can decide what he will do. And so one of the things that I picked up from my interview with Dr. Rick Horne was clarifying that and say, I can't control you. Only you have the ability to choose. Third is the pain of choosing poorly. Although they have the power to choose, there are consequences of choosing poorly. Teens often want to minimize these effects. But God has designed pain as a motivator. So we want to expose the pain as much and as gently as we can. And we want to make the connection between choosing poorly and the frustration or pain they're experiencing. So talk about the pain of choosing poorly. Fourthly, the question of control. Finally, we want to clarify the questions of control. Some things are under their control and some things are under someone else's control. For example, a teacher or a parent. And many things are under the control of no one but God. Again, listen to the other long-form podcasts, but Dr. Horne gives the example of counseling a teen who is fighting with a teacher. This teacher wants work done a certain way, and the student doesn't want to do it that way because he's learned a different way at another school. And so in this counseling scenario, he affirms that this student has the power to choose, but this student does not have the power to change the teacher, nor does Dr. Horne. So in other words, he can keep on choosing to do what he's doing, but he will keep getting negative consequences. But the choice is his. And finally, under number 2, clarify narrow, is clarify the teen's relationship with Christ. Horne encourages the counselor to gently probe using the word of relationship with Christ. Ultimately, this way of working with our teen will only solve issues for a while unless they develop their own relationship with Christ. So on our outline, listen big. 2, clarify narrow. Number 3, look wide by discovering your teen's solutions. So he suggests search through your teen's past for exceptions. These are exceptions for times that they've made wise choices and received a desirable outcome. So the goal is to help him realize times when he made good choices and did not experience the pain or frustration he's feeling now. So again, in this instance, he goes back and asks and finds out a time with the teen when the teen was doing what the teacher wanted, or a child was doing what the parent wanted, when the relationship was good, when the child was making wise choices. And finally, number 4, plan small by supporting the changes your teen wants to make. We want to encourage them with control and say, what changes do you want to make and how can I support you? Well, this small outline might help your understanding of the concepts behind Dr. Horne's strategy. But you really need to hear his stories on the podcast, and I'd encourage you to check out the book, Get Outta My Face. Thank you for listening to the Disciple Making Parent audio blog. This ministry is equipping families to stand strong against the rising antagonism to the gospel. After all, what is more important to us than the souls of our children, our grandchildren? And as demonstrated by this podcast, sometimes we have to walk through storms with them. But we can only do this ministry because of people like you who support the ministry through monthly or special gifts. If you benefited from the ministry, would you prayerfully consider becoming a monthly or regular financial partner? To do that, visit thedisciplemakingparent.com/give. Thanks for listening.